Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai.
Jai.
Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Jai.
Navindham ki jai.
Jai.
Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki
Jai.
Gangamai Yamunamai ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki jai.
Jai.
Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Pura Premanandi.
Hare Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories.
Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We continue our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the third canto, the 13th chapter, and today we're covering verses 38 and 39. So here's 38. Somastureta savananya vishtiti samsta vibhedas tavadeva dattava satrani sarvani sharira sandhis tvam sarya yajna kratur ishti bandhanaha somasturat reta savananya vishtiti sangsta vibhedas tavadeva dattavaha satrani sarvani sharira sandhis tvam sarva yagna kratur ishti bandhanaha somastureta savananya vishtiti sangsta vibhedas tavadeva dattava satrani sarvani sharira sandhis tvam sarva yagna kratur ishti bandhanaha. Please chant.
Samastureta Savananya Avistite. Samasta Samastudreta Savananya Avistitihi Samasta Vibhedas Tava Devata Tava Shastrani Sarvani Sharira Sandhis Tvam Sarva Yajna Kraturishti Bandhanaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Shamastureta savanai avastiti shamasta vibhedastav deva datava shastrani sarvani sharira shandis tam sarvo yagna kraturisti bandhanaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Somasturitah Savanani avastitati samasta vibhedastva devatatvaha satrani sarvani sarira sandesh tvam sarva yagya kratur ishti bandhanaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Somasturetah savanaya vastitihi संस्था विभेदास्तव देवधातवः सत्राणि सर्वाणि शरीरसन्धि सत्तवं सर्व यज्ञप्रतुतुरिष्टिबन्धनः हरे कृष्ण
सोमस्तुरेता शवनानि अवस्थिति समस्तविभेदास्तव देवदातव शस्त्राणि सर्वाणि शरीरसन्धिस्त्वं सर्वयज्ञक्रतुरिष्टिबन्धना
Anyone else? Okay. Soma tu retaha. Your semen is the sacrifice called soma. Sabanani, ritualistic performances of the morning. Avashtitihi, different statuses of bodily growth. Sangshta vibheda, 7 varieties of sacrifices. Tava, your. Deva, O Lord. Datavaha, ingredients of the body such as skin and flesh. Satrani, sacrifices performed over 12 days. Sarvani, all of them. Sharira, the bodily. Sandhi, joints. Tvam, your lordship. Sarva, all. Yajna, asoma, sacrifices. Kratuhu, soma, sacrifices. Ishti, the ultimate desire. Bandhana, attachment. Translation. This is the sages reciting prayers to Lord Varaha after he lifted the earth. O Lord, your semen is the sacrifice called Soma Yajna. Your growth is the ritualistic performances of the morning. Your skin and touch sensations are the 7 elements of the Agnishtoma sacrifice. Your bodily joints are symbols of various other sacrifices performed in 12 days. Therefore, you are the object of all sacrifices called soma and asoma. And you are bound by yajnas only. Purport. There are 7 kinds of routine yajnas performed by all followers of the Vedic rituals, and they are called Agnishtoma, Atyagnishtoma, Ukta, Shodashi, Vajapaya, Atiratra, and Apturyama. Anyone performing such yajnas regularly is supposed to be situated with the Lord. But anyone who is in contact with the Supreme Lord by discharging devotional service is understood to have performed all different varieties of yajnas. Text 39. Namo namaste kila mantra devata dravyaya sarva kartave kriyatmane vairagya bhaktyat majayanu bhavita Jnanaya Vidya Gurave Namo Namaha. Synonyms. Nama Namaha, obeisances unto you. Te, unto you who are worshipable. Akila, all inclusive. Mantra, hymns. Devata, the Supreme Lord. Dravyaya, unto all the ingredients for performing sacrifices. Sarva Kratave, unto all kinds of sacrifices. Kriya Atmane, unto you, the supreme form of all sacrifices. Vairagya, renunciation. Bhaktya, by devotional service. Atmajaya Anubhavita, perceivable by conquering the mind. Jnanaya, such knowledge. Vidya Gurave, the supreme spiritual master of all knowledge. Namaha, namaha. Again, I offer my respectful obeisances. Translation, O Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer our obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind, free from all visible and invisible material contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances to you as the Supreme Spiritual Master of Knowledge in devotional service. Purport by Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The qualification of bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord, is that the devotee should be free from all material contaminations and desires. This freedom is called vairagya, or renouncement of material desires. One who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to the regulative principles is automatically freed from material desires, and in that pure state of mind, one can realize the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, instructs the devotee regarding pure devotional service, so that he may ultimately achieve the association of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 10, as follows. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To one who constantly engages in the devotional service of the Lord with faith and love, the Lord certainly gives the intelligence to achieve him at the ultimate end. One has to conquer the mind, and one may do so by following the Vedic rituals and by performing different types of sacrifice. The ultimate end of all those performances is to attain bhakti, or the devotional service to the Lord. Without bhakti, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The original Personality of Godhead, or his innumerable expansions of Vishnu, are the only objects of worship by all the Vedic rituals and sacrificial performances. And we'll just read text 39 one more time. O Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer our obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind, freed from all visible and invisible material contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you as the Supreme Spiritual Master of Knowledge in devotional service. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Deva Gaurvani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarne Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So, the first thing I want to address here is a statement in Srila Prabhupada's purport to verse 39. And he says, this freedom is called vairagya, or renouncement of material desires. So this isn't a very popular statement here in this material world. We consider freedom to mean the right to pursue one's happiness by whatever means necessary, right? That's true freedom. And then there are those who have a slightly higher level of consciousness, and they sort of amend that. They say, we have the right to pursue our happiness as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else, right? That's a slightly higher level of consciousness. By the way, that first one I said, by any means necessary, that's known as anamoy, the right to pursue our happiness at all costs. And then the slightly higher level of consciousness is, yes, pursue your happiness, but just don't hurt anyone else while you're doing it, right? So that's pranamoy. Of course, still higher is still considering it the right to pursue one's happiness as long as it doesn't break any of God's laws, right? That's Gyanamoy.
Mm.
It doesn't mean necessarily they're devotees. It just means that they're smart enough to understand that God has laws and we should obey them in order to, again, it's just for our personal pleasure, but at least we shouldn't tick off the Supreme Lord, right? And then it goes on and on. There are higher and higher levels of consciousness. And as it turns out, when we're going through these levels of consciousness, it turns out that the higher one's level of consciousness goes, the more level of restraint is required, right? So at the lowest level, there's no restraint at all. And then the next level up, there's a little bit of restraint, at least considering people's other people. And then there's considering God's laws, and then there's considering, how it's actually favorable, etc. But as we go up, there's actually increasing levels of restraint. So to most people, this whole thing seems counterintuitive, right? We're putting more and more restrictions on one's freedom, right? So it seems that it defies the very definition of freedom, right? So freedom means that you can do whatever you want. There shouldn't be any restrictions whatsoever. So what's with this restraint, an increasing restraint, right? So because of that, because this seems counterintuitive, most people think that the lowest level of consciousness is actually the highest understanding, right? These are the people who emphatically implore that true freedom should have no restrictions whatsoever, right? Don't tread on me. Don't try to take away any of my freedom, right? Um, and what I'm about to say may actually surprise you. And what I'm going to say is I actually agree with that statement that true freedom should have no restrictions whatsoever, right? It should have no restrictions, right? Because by definition, freedom means that there are no restrictions, right? And so because of that, and I just came to this conclusion now, so because of that, I'm going to give up my pursuit of bhakti and I'm just going to give into my base material desires from now on, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, that second part I'm joking about. But the first part's absolutely true. Freedom cannot have any restrictions. Not that it shouldn't, it cannot. The very definition of freedom is that it cannot have restrictions, right? That's just definition. If there are restrictions, then it's not freedom, right? So why is it that in today's purport, as well as in many other places, Srila Prabhupada makes this statement equating freedom with renouncing material desires, right? And Srila Prabhupada's purports, as we know, they're based on Shastra, right? Disciplic succession. He doesn't change anything. He doesn't modify it. He doesn't uh, adjust it according to uh, whim. And since Srila Prabhupada's purports are based on Shastra, it means they're an extension of Shastra. They can also be accepted as Shastra. It's absolute truth. So, if we know that by definition, freedom can't have any restrictions, but we also know that being, as it's mentioned in Shastra, that also uh, has to be true because it's mentioned in Shastra. Shastra is truth. That freedom means renouncement of material desires. If we know that both of these seemingly contradictory statements are true, how do we actually understand them, right? If freedom can't have restrictions, but freedom means restricting oneself from material desires, how do how do we understand that, right? So before we get into that further, I mentioned that Srila Prabhupada's purports are based on the Shastra. So I should give an example of this statement appearing in Shastra, right? We shouldn't just be dogmatic about it. So this is Sri Krishna talking to Arjuna in a little conversation that uh, we know of as the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse 49, where Krishna says, "One who is self-controlled and unattached, and who disregards all material enjoyments, can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction, right? So Krishna himself is saying that one has to be self-controlled, unattached, disregarding all material enjoyments by this process of renunciation, just as Srila Prabhupada said in his purport. And that is the highest perfect stage of freedom, means freedom from reaction. So this practice of renunciation grants freedom from reaction, right? That's what the freedom is from. It's you're being freed from having to suffer the reaction of whatever you're doing, right? And as Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport, just after making that statement about freedom meaning the renunciation of material desires, he continues, one who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to the regulative principles is automatically freed from material desires. And in that pure state of mind, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So the freedom is being freed from material desires. And when we're free from material desires, then we can actually realize the personality of Godhead. We can return to our actual original dormant state. So as it turns out, true freedom actually means freedom from material desires. It doesn't mean we could do whatever we want and follow our conditioned nature to do as we please. It actually means becoming freed from the bondage of material desires. Because we know in Bhagavad Gita that we're actually forced to work. It's not that when we're running around trying to satisfy our senses, that that's a choice we're making. I mean, it's because of a choice that we made, but we have to do this, right? We're being forced as if uh, uh, puppets on strings, right? And so to break free from that, that then becomes freedom, because then we're no longer being driven by these things. And that actually, this concept, bringing these two ideas together, that freedom means that there's no restrictions whatsoever, but also freedom means renunciation from material desires. We can only understand that to whatever degree we understand that we're not these material bodies. As long as we're identifying with the material body, we're not going to understand this, right? It won't make any sense. It'll sound like renunciation means taking away our freedom, our freedom to do whatever we want, right? So to whatever extent we actually realize that we are spirit soul and have a much different inherent nature than the one that actually we imposed upon ourselves by misusing our free will and subsequently experiencing in this material world, the conditioned nature, right? To whatever degree we understand there's a difference between our conditioned nature and our constitutional nature, to that degree, this can make sense, right? These two seemingly contradictory statements that are both absolutely true. They can only make sense to whatever extent we understand, theoretically or practically, that we are spirit soul, we have an inherent nature, we are currently, due to our misuse of free will, experiencing a temporary conditioned nature that we're trying to overcome. To whatever extent we understand that, these two statements will make perfect sense together. And in order to attain freedom, actual freedom from the bondage of misidentifying with this conditioned nature, we must renounce material desires and their concomitant temporary reaction, right? Because it's freedom from the reaction. That's what renunciation gets us. When we become detached from the material world, then our actions, means our physical activities, if they're in line with the Supreme Lord, they're no longer creating a reaction. So that's what Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita is known as akarma. There's no more reaction. Although activities are still going on, since they're not directed for one's own personal benefit, they're directed toward the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. they no longer produce a reaction, therefore freedom from reaction, right? So although activities are going on, since they're in the proper consciousness, they're no longer binding us to the material world, thus freedom. But it happens when we become renounced, right? As long as we're attached to the material world, there's not true freedom because we're being forced to act according to our senses, our whims. And because true freedom is freedom from this unnatural bondage, uh, our true enemy is bondage to this material world, right? So in that way, we have to give up these false pursuits in order to free ourselves up so that we can pursue our natural state. Right? And this is where the freedom comes in. Uh, if we become detached from material nature and are no longer bound to act as if by force, as it's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, then we can actually understand and pursue our inherent nature as spirit soul, not the conditioned nature, but our constitutional nature. And thankfully for us, as Srila Prabhupada also points out in his purport, when we are sincere in this natural pursuit of devotional service, the Supreme Lord, who is dwelling in our hearts, gives us the intelligence by which to achieve him at the ultimate end, right? Srila Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita 10:10 to show us that. He's very thorough with his purport. He'll make the statement, he'll explain how it's true, even though it seems that it's counterintuitive, and he backs it with Shastra. And he gives us hope that although it's very difficult to achieve such a thing, Krishna helps us through it. It's not up to our material strength or intellectual prowess to actually make advancement. It's just up to our sincerity to surrender and to become detached from material pleasures, material nature. So freedom actually means removing restrictions, right? By definition. And the restrictions we want to remove are the three modes of material nature, right? Those are the things that are restricting us. Those are the things that are forcing us to act in very specific ways according to our conditioned nature. And we know from Bhagavad Gita 7:14 that the three modes of nature, they're very difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto Krishna, they can easily cross beyond it, right? So we can overcome that bondage by our physical or intellectual endeavor. We have to surrender unto Krishna. And when we do that, then it becomes quite easy, right? And that's where the true freedom comes in. Because then we're back to our constitutional nature. We're no longer bound by the three modes of nature. And then we can act in a very free way. So the pursuit of happiness, as it turns out, is not freedom. That's what we think, right? When we think freedom, we think the pursuit of happiness, the freedom to be unrestricted from pursuing our happiness. But as it turns out, that's not freedom, but it's actually perpetual bondage. Because as long as we're chasing this so-called freedom, chasing this material happiness, it means that our consciousness is bound by that misuse of our free will. And we are bound to the material world, which is not freedom at all, right? We consider it to be freedom because we're identifying with this temporary situation. We're not identifying with our constitutional nature, which is eternal, fully cognizant, and fully blissful, right? So as long as we're in that state, then it won't make sense that freedom means that you have to give up this pursuit of material happiness, right? So, but to whatever extent, as we mentioned before, we understand that and we understand our true nature, then it will make sense because we'll see that once we return to our original consciousness, then that's where the true freedom comes. And that's actually where happiness comes from too. We're trying to pursue this happiness uh, in an impossible way. As the song says, we're looking for love in all the wrong places. But love is there, it's to be found, but it's when we stop trying to pursue it in this material realm. So true freedom comes when we return to our original state of consciousness. And then as a side effect, right, when we return to that original consciousness, then we also experience true happiness, right? Ananda, real bliss, because that's also our inherent nature. There's no need to chase what we already have. It's already naturally there. We just have to understand what our true nature is and cultivate that by uh, engaging in Krishna bhakti and becoming renounced from material happiness. So, as it turns out, freedom means renouncing material desires, and it actually makes perfect sense once we understand that our true nature is it's against this temporary pursuit of self-centric pleasure. One other thing that I want to talk about before we open up for discussion, because we're talking about Varahadev. Varahadev is actually one of my favorite incarnations of Krishna because Krishna has this way of he loves his devotees so much unconditionally that he's willing to do anything for them. He is, of course, we know he's conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. We know that from every year we chant these verses in the month of Kartik, and we see how Krishna becomes defeated by his devotees' love. And he'll do absolutely anything, right? And so in this case, his devotee, Bhumi, who actually then becomes his wife, uh, she's in distress, right? She's not situated where she should be. She's under the water. And so he wants to serve as devotee. He's not only serving Bhumi, he's also serving the creation of the material world in this case. Because we're hearing about this pastime, we're hearing about two different Varahas in uh, different ages. And so in order for Svayambhuva Manu to do his service of populating the planet has to be populatable. It has to be, in a situation that's, not submerged underwater, again, unless he's only making aquatics. So he's serving everyone, right? So he's serving Bhumi Devi by putting her back into her rightful position. He's serving Manu by giving him a place to procreate. He's serving Brahma because Brahma was tasked with the service of that secondary creation. So he's helping him perform that service successfully. Again, here we see that Brahma, when he was bewildered by this, which often happens in devotional service, we try our best to do something and something just doesn't go the way we expected. And when we try to fight that, when we try to control that, it doesn't work out well for us. But when we understand that everything happens as Krishna wills it, and we act accordingly, we just say, okay, now I just have to meditate on Krishna and figure out what's to happen next. And as soon as he surrendered to that idea and was meditating again on the Supreme Lord to try to understand how to resolve the situation, Varahadev came out of his nostril, started out about this size, and then expanded very quickly. And then there he is. So generally, when we think of the Supreme Lord, right? Supreme Lord, we think something that's very majestic, very beautiful, very splendid, powerful. These are things that we think of when we think of the Supreme Lord. All of the qualities that we consider to be good, they're all in him, but completely, right? He's completely perfect in all of these things. So beauty, strength, fame, wealth, renunciation, like that. What we don't generally picture when we think of the Supreme Lord is a boar, right? A lowly creature who roots around in its own filth, and most people are afraid to go near it. We don't necessarily, that's not usually the first thing that comes to mind when we're thinking of the Supreme Lord. But Krishna is so kind that depending on what his devotees' needs are, he comes in that very specific form. And it doesn't matter to him because for him it's out of love, right? So yeah, no, if he's coming as a pig, he's coming as a pig, right? Whatever the case may be, whatever's going to be useful in that service. Because what he had to do is he had to uproot the earth from the ocean and put it back where it belongs. And he can do that without taking any form. He can just do it. He's unlimited. He can do whatever he wants. But in order to show us a relishable pastime and also to bewilder the demons, he does these things, right? To serve his devotees in the best way, in the most relishable way, he accepts these strange forms. So the devotees, they're quite taken by this, right? They appreciate the Lord's willingness to do strange things just for his devotees, right? He is conquered and overwhelmed by their love and devotion. But to the demons, they're just completely bewildered, right? They see this large form of a pig and they're like, what is going on? Just see, your so-called Supreme Lord. He's just this animal and not even like a cool animal, like a horse or an elephant or a cow or something. It's a boar, right? And so you have this interaction between Hiranyaksha and Varaha also. But as I was saying, yes, Varahadev, one of my favorite incarnations of Krishna. Most people would say, obviously Krishna. Those are very sweet pastimes, but this is also a very sweet pastime because Krishna, who's unlimited, who can do anything he wants, uh, being controlled by the love of his devotees, voluntarily accepts the form of a seemingly low creature, uh, just so he can perform a service to the devotees. And that is actually one of the sweetest things that can be done, having the capability to solve all of these issues without any effort whatsoever, but because of wanting to interact in a very intimate way with his devotees, he'll accept these forms and have these pleasurable interactions with them. Okay, so let's stop here and see if there is any discussion, either based on freedom and renunciation and how they're together, or if anyone wants to just talk more about Lord Varahadev or anything else. Now is the time.
If anybody has questions, please just unmute yourself or raise your hand and we can go from there. Yeah, it's a very interesting point about the contradictions. I was forwarded an article recently. We were talking about Nitya Paddhas and Nitya Siddhas, and I guess there was a discussion of when the soul, um, where the soul was before it came to this material world, and I cannot explain it, but the paradox, and that the point was about paradox and how Srila Prabhupada handles them, how he uses Guru Shastra and Sadhu to convey his point. My question was about, one of the things you said was when we are bewildered and we try to solve the problems, and think, we know we're not in control.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna is in control, but how do we know, or when do we, because on one side we are told to put in all our effort.
Yeah.
So how far do we go with that effort, or how do we know that we have done all we can, and now no matter what, we've got to accept what has been dealt us.
Yes. Great question. So we have to learn, and this is a tough one, but we have to learn that there's a there's a separation between the action and the consciousness, right? So our consciousness has to be that everything is for Krishna, right? But our action should be that I'm going to do my best to please Krishna. So generally we have this tendency is if it's not up to me, then why should I do anything, right? And if it is up to me, then I better get credit when it works out well, right? We don't mind passing off the blame when it doesn't go well. We'll say, "Oh no, I did the best I could, but someone else messed it all up." And so that's what the problem is. So in the material world, this is our tendency. We either want to, you know, put our best foot forward and do our absolute, utmost, try our absolute utmost to get the proper result, but then take credit for it. Or, if we're not taking credit for it, we don't want to do anything. What we have to do is always endeavor to do the best in pleasing Krishna. But when it doesn't work out, we have to rely on him instead of us. We can't become frustrated and try to control the situation. We have to understand that no, Krishna is in control. So we keep doing our best, um, but with that mood of detachment. And it's a fairly difficult thing, even just to conceive of, let alone to apply. But once we start doing it, Krishna, because he's in the heart, when he sees that, he gives the intelligence by which we can actually be detached in doing our best. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of practice. It takes some association so that we can properly understand and see proper examples. But eventually it becomes not only easier, but it becomes more natural because that is our natural state. Our natural state is to do whatever we can, just like Krishna's natural state is to do whatever he can to please his devotees. Our natural state is to do whatever we can to please him. So it's actually a constant competition between the devotees and Krishna of trying to please each other, right? Which is pretty far out because we're actually trying to please ourselves and we can't, right? Because as long as we think we're the center, the controller, the enjoyer, there's no question of true satisfaction because we're dealing with a conditioned nature. We're not dealing with our actual constitutional nature. But when we give that pursuit up and just try to please Krishna, then all of a sudden we are experiencing pleasure, right? It's a strange thing. It seems very counterintuitive from our conditioned point of view. But yeah, we do have to put forth our best endeavor in serving Krishna, but we have to make sure that we're serving Krishna. And we have plenty of examples of this. Brahma, Indra, plenty of very elevated devotees who from time to time lean back into their conditioned nature, right? And try to solve a problem with their own prowess. And it never goes well, right? It doesn't go well ever. But as soon as one then understands that, okay, no, I have to, you know, situate myself properly and rely on Krishna, then it all works out, right? Brahma, he couldn't even do creation. He's a highly qualified individual, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have had that post. Krishna would have taken it himself, right? And he does that sometimes if there's no jiva qualified. But he's highly qualified, and there he is, and he has every single ingredient to do that secondary creation. It's all there, but he can't figure it out. And he's trying. He's looking around. He's thinking about it. He's acting. He's going down and actually searching, and he can't figure it out. But the Supreme Lord understood that, okay, he's trying. He's sincere. So let's give him a hint. And so then the sound is generated, tapa, tapa. And he thought, okay, now I understand. I have to perform some tapasya, right? And only after that was it revealed to him by the Supreme Lord how to use all the things that are already there, how to actually do that to expand the creation, right? And then again, sometimes he loses focus even after doing that, right? Because then he's like, okay, we need to fill now the world's here. Now we need to fill it with population, right? So he's generating this progeny and he's sort of getting ahead of himself. And he's saying to the Kumars, okay, you generate progeny. And they're like, no, that's not what I'm interested in. You know, our service is better, helping those who are on this platform of Brahman and understanding. We can assist them in reaching perfection. We're not going to procreate. And then he became frustrated. Wait, I created you and you're not even obeying me, right? But he wasn't trying to engage them according to their nature. He was trying to engage them according to what he thought was a priority. And so he became angry. And in that anger, Rudra came. And then he said, okay, so now you procreate. And Rudra said, okay, sure. And he did. And then all of a sudden, the universe was being deconstructed, right? Because that's what Rudra does, right? Again, asking the wrong person to do the service, not according to their nature, right? So it wasn't again until he surrendered and understood the assignment that, um, right? So sometimes we do have to make adjustments, right? But we have to make them with detachment and in the line of the desires of the Supreme Lord, right? So Brahma, it's not that he was doing the wrong thing. So it's one might argue, well, he was endeavoring to fill the creation with progeny. That's good. He should keep doing that. But he was doing it in a way where he was forgetting his position as a servant of the Supreme Lord, right? And he wasn't trying to engage uh, these personalities according to their nature. He was trying to engage them according to how he thought creation should go, right? So the endeavor must be there, but we have to make sure that it is being focused in the right direction. We have to make sure that we're not doing it because we think that we can fix the situation or that, like that. We have to always be connected with the desires of the Supreme Lord, and that comes from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, which is just three different versions of Shastra, right? The Shastra is there. The Guru will only instruct us according to Shastra, and the Sadhus will, by their examples, show us how to apply Shastra. So it's Shastra, Shastra, and Shastra in three forms. And the closer we get to engaging our endeavors according to Shastra, then the clearer it becomes, if that makes sense. So the endeavor has to be there, but we have to make sure we're directing that endeavor in the right way. What we tend to do is when our endeavor is producing bad results, we give up. And we can't give up. We may need to make an adjustment, sure, but we can't give up. All right, because then that becomes that's then mode of ignorance, right? Becoming inactive in that sense, not in the a karma sense, but in the, refusing to do what should be done.
And I think it is that part about where we have to make adjustment. That's where the difficulty is, knowing when to
Yeah.
make. And I think that's where the ego, and I keep thinking about that question that was asked of Srila Prabhupada, and he answered by saying that requires some intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you are intelligent, you are able to handle the ego. Not completely, but at least with some amount of ease to get past it and to make that adjustment. I think that's where the difficulty.
Yeah, it's the intelligence to understand how to make the adjustment. Because if we're making the adjustment according to Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu, then that's intelligence. If we're just talking about material intelligence, sometimes that actually makes the ego worse because we think we're relying on what we've acquired intellectually, right? But we're still relying on ourselves. So, but true intelligence, the true application of intelligence is when we do make those adjustments that we're making them according to Shastra, right? And we're taking ourselves out of center. We're redirecting our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric, right? So taking the guidance according to Shastra instead of according to whim or any other reason. That's that's the true application of intelligence. Otherwise, if we're applying intelligence materially, then that doesn't create the ego. That makes it, or that makes it worse. I just used the wrong word there, but I think you know what I meant. Go ahead.
Anybody else have? If not, I just had one more. You may have answered it, but I might have missed it. You said Varahadev was your favorite incarnation.
One of my favorite.
One of.
Yeah.
Did you tell us why?
Because of his willingness, because of his love for his devotees, his willingness to accept a very bewildering form, a seemingly low form, just to have that interaction with his devotees. Because he could have fixed the situation without even visually appearing. But since there were various devotees who very sincerely were surrendering to him and needing his help, then he manifested himself in that particular way to serve, in a seemingly low way, just so he can express his love for the devotees. That's the reason why he's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Charachandra Prabhu, Krishna. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I joined a little late. Quick question. I'm sure you must have referred the previous verses. In the previous verses, one of the prayers mentioned that Varahadev is a personification of Vedas.
Mhm.
How can you explain on that?
Let me look. One of the previous verses.
Yeah, today, which one you read?
38 and 39. I'm scrolling.
32, 30, 33, 34. Can you do the 34 maybe? Yeah.
34. All the sages uttered with great respects, O unconquerable enjoyer of all sacrifices, all glories and all victories unto you. You are moving in your form of the personified Vedas, and in the hair holes of your body the oceans are submerged. For certain reasons, to uplift the earth, you have now assumed the form of a boar. Yeah, so these are general prayers that are acknowledging Lord Varaha as the Supreme Lord. So the whole part about the the in your body the oceans are submerged, right? So all of creation are coming from his pores, etc. But he's also the personified Vedas. So as we read today, all of the Vedas, and we know from Bhagavad Gita 15:15, of all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known. And so the Vedas is directing us to understand the Supreme Lord and understand our relationship with him, the Sambandha, who we are in relation to him and how to act according to that relationship. And so he's the personified Vedas because he's also, that's also his purpose, right? To bring everyone back to their original state, their blissful state. Is that okay?
Yeah, I did speak on this subject on Friday.
Oh, so
according to my understanding, I wanted to see what you thought about it.
yeah, unfortunately I missed your class, but
Yeah, no problem. It's not a.
give me the gist of how you explained it.
Well, yeah, we all understand that Vedas comes from him, his personified Vedas. But particularly, I thought why the Devatas or Brahma, mentioned personified Vedas for Varahadev. As you mentioned, the boar is kind of ignorant animal.
Yeah.
So I thought people should not misunderstand. Say, boar, no, he's even though in this form, he is all cognizant his personified Vedas. Now
Yeah.
we should understand its transcendent position. That's the way I took it.
Yeah,
But
that's
I could not find anywhere any reference why particularly offered. That's the way I took it. Like we should understand the contradicting nature. A bore form, but he's not an ignorant. Rather, he's a all cognizant and all conscious Supreme Lord and personified Vedas. That's what I thought actually. So
yeah, good. Yeah, so there's also a thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've been talking about this for probably over a decade. All these different prayers that are offered from these different devotees to the different forms of the Supreme Lord, they seem to follow sort of a template, right? And part of that is when they're glorifying whichever form that is, and they're saying how he's actually the source of everything, right? So, in other words, it's prayers to Vishnu because whatever that form is that they're encountering, even when they're actually offering prayers to Krishna, right? When these different demigods, after being bewildered for a bit, are offering prayers to Krishna, they're first acknowledging his position of Vishnu, right? Because that's the way we approach the Supreme Lord, not too personal, right? Understanding his greatness, but then getting more and more personal and getting to the heart of the matter, right? And so it seems, and I really want to get into this and sort of identify it because I'm pretty sure, because there's so many similarities in these prayers, I'm pretty sure there's
yeah, I noticed that same thing.
format.
Yeah.
And I think that's very instructive for us when we pray because we tend to just cut to the chase and we're way too familiar with the Supreme Lord and we're just like telling him what to do. We're saying basically when we're praying, we're saying, "Hey God, I guess you're not aware, but these things are happening here, and if you do this, it'll be way better, right?" We're not taking into consideration that all of these things that we're praying about
Mm.
happening for a reason. And if we really want to address that, we should understand it. So if we get into the habit of following sort of this format of prayer, it helps us actually understand who we are in relationship to him. And then it'll help us adjust our prayers instead of praying for mundane things or cessation of material miseries without actually elevation to our spiritual goal. We'll actually feel a little bit foolish in our previous prayers and we'll start actually praying something worth praying, right? If we start
Mm.
following these examples. Anyway, I don't know if it has legs or not, but there are enough similarities where I think there's basically not a strict format, but a one that can be followed and should be followed. But one of these days I'll actually get around to doing that. Um, Maybe you can help me since you know. But
Thank you.
yeah, it is something worth observing. But yeah, this seems to be, because yeah, like you said, it is bewildering to have that form, but at the same time, he is the Supreme Lord. All of these things are happening. And to be able to understand that contradiction, right? It's something that only the devotees do because it says that these forms bewilder the demons.
Yeah.
Throughout the Bhagavatam, it talks about how these different forms are bewildering to the demons because they can't understand,
Mm.
right? Because they're
Right.
they're too they're too occupied with the pursuit of material happiness that doesn't make any sense.
There are still some people against worship of Bara incarnation at this time. I can see people don't like it. Why
Right.
we worship now also at this age of time, at this point of time, we still see cannot be understood so easily.
Yeah. But these
That's
these same people are worshiping like millionaires and,
yeah.
giant and things like that because we worship whatever we hold valuable, right?
Mm.
They think a boar is not valuable, but a millionaire is valuable because he's successful. Because I want money, therefore I will worship this person who has money, and then maybe I'll learn how to make money, right? So it's
Mm.
whatever our priorities are, that's what we're going to worship. So if we actually understand the reason the Supreme Lord takes these forms, it's actually quite sweet, right? we think of it as kind of maybe even disgusting, right?
Yeah.
The coarse hairs, and he shakes, and the water's coming all over the place, and nobody wants to get hit by that. But the Devatas, the devotees, they're understanding that's like Charanamrita. That's stuff. They're taking water that was shaken off of a pig's body, and they're honoring it like it's the best, because it is. It's the best thing because that's the supreme Lord, right? You don't do that like to a normal boar. You're gonna probably get some disease. But yeah, the idea is anything associated with the Supreme Lord, especially when he's doing something that's out of the ordinary just so he can please his devotees.
Mm.
Uh, that's worth worshiping, right? Because otherwise, Lord Vishnu with Lakshmi Devi as his consort, people could just be worshiping him to get money, right? For the same
Mhm.
reason you worship a millionaire. That's not proper worship. I mean, it's natural in one sense, but really, when he goes out of his way to take these crazy, seemingly crazy forms just so he can please his devotees and serve them, that's that's splendid. That's something that, it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense because, people with children, they'll do anything to please their children, right?
Mm.
Whatever it is, right? Oh, yeah, the thing that Srila Prabhupada brings up often, you have the high court judge, and he acts very different in different circumstances. When he's actually in the court, everyone's respecting him. When he's, having lunch with you know, his friends, the other lawyers, they're treating him one way in the court and they're treating him another way. But like when he's at home, he's a horse. He's down on all fours and his kid's on his back, and the kid is ordering him around. Now you take me into the kitchen, horse, right? This is a Supreme Court judge who, is is delving out punishments for, capital crimes like that. And and his little kids ordering him around. And that's the sweetest thing. That's his real position. It's his real position isn't, that's his job when he's a Supreme Court justice. But his real nature is his love for his child. And so he's willing to do that. And so in a similar way, but even more fantastic and more beautiful way, Krishna, who's the supreme, takes these seemingly low positions just to serve those who he loves, his devotees. Right. So, I mean, we can understand it to some extent, but yeah, until we actually redirect our consciousness properly, we won't fully, but it will all become clear. It will make sense, and it will all be the most relishable thing.
Hare Krishna
Thank
Prabhuji,
you.
I have one question.
Sure.
Very nice class. And
Mhm.
I question, how do we know that we are using our intelligence or we are using mind? Because mind is covered with so many contaminations. So
Yeah,
how to into that state of intelligence, and how do we use that?
that's a great question. Very important one. So the short answer, the quick answer is that if we're using our intelligence in line with Shastra, it's good. If we're using it according to whim, it's not good. But there's a longer version of that question or that answer because sometimes the mind will make you think that you're basing your intelligence on Shastra, but it's actually not because it's tricky, right? The mind understands if we appreciate something, right? Like a kid, for example. If a kid wants something and he doesn't care how he gets it, he just wants it. They'll make up any excuse to get it, right? So whatever they know is valuable to you, they'll say, "Oh, but if I have this, then you will have, like that." They'll relate it in a way. And so in a similar way, the mind does that. If I want to enjoy material, the senses are pulling me to enjoy. Um, and but I also value Shastra, then the mind will say, "Oh, but in Shastra it says just like this." Like even Arjuna did it, right? Krishna gave him a direct order, you fight, right? And so Arjuna said, "Oh, but according to Shastra, if family tradition is destroyed, then that's going to cause more problems, Krishna. So actually, you're wrong. I shouldn't fight, right?" So the mind does, of course, Arjuna didn't really think that way. He's doing this for our. But yeah, but we do that. So, like I said, the short answer is if our intelligence is in line with Shastra, it's right. But we have to understand, we have to be very careful to see what our true motive is, right? If we're following Shastra to enjoy, then we're not actually following Shastra. So we have to cultivate. I mean, what it comes down to, and it always comes down to these three things, is Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. We have to make sure that in following Shastra, we are understanding what our true position, just like we were talking about with Krishna Kirtan Prabhu and prayers. If we're actually understanding our position and Krishna's position, our prayers are going to change because we're going to stop praying for basically material things and start praying for, actual spiritual things. So our understanding of Shastra will change as we become purified. Because when we read Shastra early on, we're reading it through our conditioned filter. So we're reading something, but it's being filtered through our conditioned understanding of things in general. But as time goes on and we become purified, we start seeing Shastra for actually what it is saying, right? Just like we can read Bhagavad Gita thousands of times, and every time we read it, we're learning more, right? We're getting deeper and deeper realizations because we're becoming purified, right? And so we have to be sure that our motive in approaching Shastra is actually to please Krishna, not to please ourselves. So if, for example, I have an idea that I want to prove that others are wrong and I'm right, and I open up the Shastra and I start searching for passages that will support my cause, and I'll ignore any other passages. That means we're materially motivated. That means we don't actually understand Shastra. It's good that we're referring to Shastra, but we're not using it properly. So to use our intelligence properly, not only do we make sure we're referring to Shastra, but we make sure that we're applying Shastra in the way that it is guiding us to, right? We have to pay attention to the context. We have to understand time, place, and circumstance actually properly, not just to, because a lot of times we use time, place, and circumstance to not follow Shastra in a clever way. Say, oh, no, that's not practical in this day and age. We have to do it in a different way, which is more enjoyable, right? So yeah, we have to constantly monitor our motives. And it's not necessarily the easiest thing because the mind's tricky. But as long as we're engaging in devotional service, we are valuing sadhu sangha, we are chanting and avoiding offenses while doing so, then gradually our intelligence becomes purified, and then it stops trying to fool us into actually pursuing material desires in the guise of pursuing spiritual matters.
Yeah.
So it becomes tricky. Like I said, there's a simple answer is if you're following Shastra, then it's good. But
Yeah.
it is a more complicated answer because the mind is tricky, and we have to make sure that we're bringing it in line. And the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to do that. It teaches us how to bring our senses in line, means the gross senses, but also the mind and the intelligence. And the way to do that is to engage in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, right? And then all of a sudden everything starts becoming clearer and clearer as we progress.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nicely explained.
Sure.
Our
Thank you.
consciousness is purified, and then we start identifying our motives, and then we can find if we are using the intelligence or mind. That's what you said.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice explanation. And I'm listening to everybody's. There's a lot of things to know. And we all know that God is Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachti. So he is always Purna, full. He has all qualifications, and he thinks why he should come bore this thing. Yeah, that's also, we think that is the lowest thing, animal and like that. A lot of things we see, but it's not the thing. And he came with that form, and he would have done, like you said, he would have done sitting in Vaikuntha, and he would have just uh, given all the instructions. But not that he himself came and then he saved the earth. That was really, really a thinkable thing. And now you are saying that mind is something, and I know mind is. I always think mind is like, if my mind says something, my mind is monkey. It goes, jumps here and there, here and there. When I chant, I'll bring it back to normal, my chanting. If it goes somewhere, I'll bring it back. I try to bring it back and see Krishna's form, and I concentrate on that. So mind is just something, and we are human beings, and this mind has given, but we have to put it in our proper place. That's all. After you said everything, is really, really helping, and it's a nice class. Thank you very much.
Good, good. Thank you. I've had the great mercy and opportunity to hear from so many self-realized souls. So I certainly can't take any credit for myself. I'm just repeating what I've had the great privilege of hearing from all these great Vaishnavas, and that's the process. That's what we have to do. We have to take full, and I don't like this turn of phrase, take full advantage, but because generally in the material world, when we say take advantage, it's in a negative way, but it goes the positive way too. We have to uh, utilize the opportunity properly
That's yeah.
When it's presented to us, and that's our process. So whenever we have that great opportunity of these, great souls traveling through and giving classes and showing by their examples, yeah, if we pay attention and then we can exponentially make it grow just just by repeating what these great souls have
Yeah.
told us. And gradually we come to actually see it, to understand it, not just in theory, but in practice.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I do it. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava.
Panchakalpatarभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you.